Welcome. I'm your host, Christina Haskin, and tonight I'm privileged to have people from the Ferguson Library, and we're going to talk about the library and the situation of the importance of libraries today. We have the President and Chief Executive Officer, Ernest DiMattia, and the Chair of the Ferguson Board, Kathryn Emmet. She's a lawyer, and she's a partner of the firm Emmet and Glondis. So welcome. I'm glad you could come. And I know a lot of things have been happening with the library, and it's in the news of with budget cuts and stuff. That there's a question about how many hours and whether the government can afford to have the services that we've had in the past. And we'll get to that later, but I know it's an issue that is important to all of the citizens because a lot of people really depend on the library at the moment. But we'll talk a little bit about maybe the importance of libraries starting in our country from the very beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of libraries?
Sure, be happy to. Well, when you talk about public libraries, you really have to go back to the days of the founding of our country, and particularly go back to Benjamin Franklin, who was the first one really to start the concept of having quote, a library, end quote. And that library was really the pooling together of books from various people who had books back in those days, and setting up what they called a subscription library, where all these books would be together in one place, and people would pay a small fee to participate in borrowing these materials. But then really the American public library as we know it today started in the mid-1800s primarily, although it happened in small communities around the country, but the Boston Public Library really was the beginning of all of it for a free public library back in 1850, 1851. And subsequent to that, it's developed over a period of time to the point where just about every community, any place in the United States has a library of some kind that they can relate to. But I must just say that the whole library concept really is at the core of democracy, and that's really where it all began. That people felt that one of the reasons that democracy, could succeed was the fact that everybody had equal access to information, and that's quite frankly, Christina, where it's at, and
right.
That's why
well,
we're here.
I think that's what's so wonderful about libraries, that no matter what your situation is, or that every citizen has the access to share that information. And in the, even now with computers, it's expanded to the information technology. But it seems that sometimes the libraries are taken for granted, but in these rough times that the services, do you feel that you're getting more people coming into the library?
Well,
tell us a little bit about
yes.
how many people is the Ferguson Library. First of all, the Ferguson Library is a wonderful looking library. I mean, it's the gem of Stamford, and you've just done a renovation. It's just beautiful. But it's very well, it's not like nobody comes to the library. So tell us a little bit about how people use it.
Well, there are, actually there is a main library in Stamford, which is downtown, and there are branches, one in the South End, and then the Harry Bennett branch in the Turner River area, and the Weed Hollander branch in Springdale. And they are used day and night whenever they're open by everybody in all the communities that are local to those branches. And it's, if you wouldn't know from the outside, but when you go in particular to the main library, it's a beehive of activity. I mean, from very young children to senior citizens, the place is packed all the time. And it's interesting, especially in these times when people need access to computers and to the internet. The library is an extremely important facility for people because there's computer access to, free computer access to people in the community in the library, and it's incredibly heavily used at this point, and people preparing resumes and doing job searches, and that's a very important activity in these times.
You also have ongoing you support the education process that the schools are doing, but in coordinating programs, and you have a lot of programs for kids. I know when my daughter started, she was 2, we went to the kids' reading room, and there's author events and all these. Tell us a little bit about your program.
There are all kinds of, I would ask Ernie if he could elaborate, but they're, from birth to through high school.
I think we said earlier from cradle to grave.
Right, I love that.
Is the concept of doing it. But these programs, of course, are in various ways of help to people. And one of the interesting aspects of what we do is the fact that there are so many different ways we help people. There are people would come in, and when they're really young children, then of course they need some entertaining. They need story times, and they need things to play with, and things of that nature, as well as all the books that they will borrow and will use. And then you go right up through life, when you're in grade school, and then in high school, and then in college. There's always the research that has to be done and all the information for the educational part of a person's early part of their life. And then they go on into their professions, and then we continue that work with all of the professional and advanced materials that we've got, plus the recreational side of the spectrum, and just going through life.
Concerts
and then, of course, and as people will come, as they get to the middle part of their life, they may not use us as much as they did when they were younger, but when they get older, they'll be back again, because that's the story. And yet, it's that, Christina, plus all of the people that come in who are not native to our country or native to our locality, and the library is one of the very few places that they can come in order to learn about the country and learn about the community, and in many cases to help them to learn to speak English so that they can integrate better and things of that nature.
And you also have basic computer instruction, right?
Yes, absolutely.
For people who aren't computer literate yet.
Right.
I think there may be, for some people who don't go to the library a lot, a misconception that it's sort of old-fashioned, but the fact is it's very current. I mean, the library has also many databases that are available online with the use of your library card that you can access. It has a program for kids who are in school, which is like an online tutor program, which is incredibly valuable to help students in schools with their homework and their work in school online.
Right.
There is instruction on use of computers. Definitely that goes on as well. So.
Taking a PowerPoint class.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's really a community. The libraries are community centers and educational centers for the community.
And also, you showcase people's artwork. I know you have various photography and painting.
Right.
Just
one more way in which we integrate with the community. Right now, we've been doing in the children's department. We have we did this at one time and then stopped for a few years, and now that we're renovated, what we do, each elementary school, we would give them a chance to bring the artwork. They would select the artwork from the youngsters in the elementary school. We'd give them 3 to 4 weeks worth of exposure, and we post the artwork in the children's department and have young kids bring their families in, and it's just a wonderful way for them to be exposed within the community.